Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1989 Arcade Bar podcast. My name is Ben, and I'm owner of 1989 Arcade Bar, which is a retro arcade bar in Sydney, Australia. And we are here for episode 9 of the 1989 Arcade Bar podcast to talk about Sunset Riders. And joining me today, I have the wonderful Tim Harvey. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, Ben. Good. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, man. And we also have the Martin Taylor, the wonderful human being, Martin Taylor, who actually at the moment is not here. I don't know where he is. This is the joy of doing this live, Tim. We have moments like this where we're like, okay. Oh, no, actually, I've just seen that there's a message from Martin saying he's got a bin emergency. He'll be exactly 2 minutes. Okay, so we're going to fill 2 minutes while Martin sorts out his bin emergency.
Well, it's funny because looking at my chat, it said that Martin posted this 1 minute from now.
Ah, so it's going to be 1 minute back.
No, well, my laptop's saying it's 7:05, and it's saying that he posted it at 7:06. So I'm really impressed with him at the moment.
He's ahead of schedule. That's very good. That's very good. Well, we'll wait for him to come back. But yes, the reason why we're doing a Sunset Riders special is because Tim is now the world record holder for the highest score ever on the arcade version of Sunset Riders, which is an amazing magical feat that you did at the bar back in May, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail later on. But yeah, we figured that what a wonderful way to celebrate that by doing a podcast about the game and have you in so we could chat about your experiences playing the game and also getting the high score. But we're just waiting for Martin to. Here he is. Here's the man. Hello.
Sorry about that, everybody.
What happened?
Nice to be on. There was it's a long story. Bin emergency, all cleared, all fine. Had to run out for the trucks.
Oh God. Okay. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
I literally picked up the wheelie bin, literally picked it up and ran, and it sorted. But it was like exact timing. So.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, we can take a moment for you to catch your breath back.
It's okay.
Get back into the zone.
I'll keep my fluids up.
Oh, what are we drinking this evening? Look at that.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. Well, I'm having some Jameson because it's there, and I didn't get a chance to go to the bottle shop. I think I sent you a photo through the week, Ben. Maybe I put it in the chat with you as well, Tim. But the beer farm stuff that's been coming through lately. We've got a bottle around the corner, and they always get a great range of craft beer. But I tried this Extravaganza. Have you heard of this?
No.
I have not.
It's a Shiraz Sauvignon Wild Hybrid Ale that is 6.5%. So it's like a beer wine, and it sounds like the dumbest, grossest thing in the world. But I trust Beer Farm. They usually make some kind of out there stuff. And I pretty much drank everything they had in the bottle shop over the space of a couple of weeks. And now they don't have it. Now I'm sad. It's so weird, but it is fucking amazing, and it's such a good winter beer. If you see it around, highly recommended. So.
Okay. Oh man, Beer Farm do because I was at a local festival yesterday actually. Oh no, yesterday. No, because it's Monday because it's the long weekend. Oh, it's so confusing. And Saturday, and the Beer Farm had a tent, so I had a few there. The beverages on Saturday, they're good, man. They do some good stuff.
Yeah, I'm never disappointed. They did like some weird salted plum one a while ago, like a Japanese style.
Oh, that sounds good.
And it was, I mean, like both of them were kind of considered sours or marketed as such, but they were not kettled, so they weren't overpowering, and they still had a lot of the taste of what they'd obviously put in there, and just pulled it off perfectly. Like I'm sure I've talked about it before on the podcast, but I'm very picky about my sours. I like them okay, but they've got to be beery. Like,
yeah, they can't be too fruity, right? Because like that's a problem. Like a lot of sours, they just go for the fruit rather than the actual sour beer taste, which is a bit like, well, kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, sour lolly and booze, like, you know, I mean, sure, if you're like 16, 17 and that's the most alcoholic to cost efficient method of getting drunk as a teenager, like, sure, you go for it. But now, it's going to be better. So,
yeah, it's true. Well, I'm on the Black Sheep Ale because of the Queen's Jubilee, Audi had this amazing range of like UK beers and UK things. Like, you know, you could go and buy Penguins in mass. You could go and buy like, what was it? Thomas bought some like Worcestershire sauce flavored chips and all that kind of stuff. So I've totally gone full UK with the Black Sheep Pale Ale, which is delicious.
Oh, I really want to try that stuff. I haven't had it, and yeah, haven't done the Aldi trip because I know they've got the Holy Grail beer as well.
The golden ale one. Yeah, it's delicious.
Yeah,
delicious. And Timmy, what are you on this evening?
I'm drinking a beer from the Australian brewery, which is sort of out Rouse Hill way. This one is Amarillo, which they do a range of like single hop beers, so they only use one hop for the entirety of their beer. And this is, I first tried this a while ago, and last time I was in there, I saw it was back and was super excited, so I thought I had to pick up a few of those.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, the Australian brewery do some great stuff. They do some really good stuff. Lots of really, really lovely beers. I did a little intro for Tim whilst you were out getting the bins here there, Martin. Like, what an adventure to have on a Monday. Yeah. So we are obviously doing a special Sunset Riders focused episode of the podcast today or this evening because Tim is the world record holder for the highest score on the arcade version of Sunset Riders, which is pretty bloody awesome. Let's just like for a moment, just let that sink in. And you got the record. You got the record in May this year as well, so it wasn't too long ago, which is pretty cool. So we'll definitely pick your brains and get your thoughts on the experience. And obviously, Martin was there. I was there. We're all there when it happened, which was
and you were there, and you were there,
and you were there, and everybody was there with us. So we were like, let's do a Sunset Riders special. But as I like to always do with these podcasts, I like to like open up with a little bit of like, what have we been up to? What's happening? What's going on? And also, I like to plug a few things that are happening at 1989 as well, because you know this is the 1989 Arcade Bar podcast. It is a retro video game podcast. It is a pop culture podcast, but also I just like to remind people what is happening at the bar, because things do happen at the bar quite regularly. And I can't remember, Martin, when we did the last podcast, because you weren't here, you weren't there for the Star Wars one, were you? You weren't part of the
No, I listened.
Podcast.
I was in the chat, but I knew I couldn't be there, and my experience with the Star Wars games was quite slim. Like I had played quite a few of the ones that people picked for the top 5 or the worst ones. I definitely played a couple of those.
Yeah,
but I never owned any, so it was only really sort of very brief access to them before my friends got bored of them, and then we played something else. So
yeah.
But it's quite the range, you know. Like they've covered so much, and the pod racing I really want to give a go. Especially after you were talking about it, it's like, actually, that sounds really great.
Pod racing is really good. It's really fun. It's basic, yeah, like we said in the podcast. It's like having it's Mario Kart or was it Wipeout for the N64, but with pod racing, but with Star Wars. Actually, I'm really glad you mentioned that, Martin, because I was just about to say we now have 2 Nintendo 64s at the bar. So for ages, we had a Nintendo 64 and another console, like a Mega Drive or a Super Nintendo or a PlayStation. I've just thrown caution to the wind, and I've just put another N64 in the bar. So if you do want to come to the bar and play Star Wars Pod Racer, we have that. And should somebody else want to play another game, they can go and play it on the other Nintendo 64 that we have, because we have two on the floor now. So that's a good excuse. I know, right? And I think the new one I brought in as well actually has legit N64 Nintendo controllers. So yeah, pop in and have a go. That work probably. They haven't got the broken sort of like you know the little joysticky bit is always the first bit to break. No, these ones are working perfectly. So yeah, it's good. Come in and play it. But the reason why I also mentioned that is because obviously we had Retro Arcade Club in between that podcast, just before that podcast was recorded in this podcast, and you were there hosting a couple of like masterclasses, and you're going to be doing the same hopefully for the next one, which is I haven't actually told you when the date is for the next one. I'm so sorry, Martin.
Oh, it's the 26th though, isn't it?
Yeah, 26th of June, so in a couple of weeks. So what was it like? What were the games, and what was it like to host a couple of masterclasses?
Well, this was the first Retro Arcade Club post COVID. Well, obviously COVID's still happening, you know. But you know, we could do it, and it was fine. It was safe. And it was really, really great because I think, we do a lot of events at 89. And since the licensing changes with being able to bring kids in with the Guardian, this was kind of the first event for families, I think. I feel that really kind of worked in that sense, and it was full of families, which was fantastic. So obviously, parents who were into retro gaming, who most people had a bunch of kids. Like the families that were there were big families in some cases. But also, dad and son who's getting to that sort of, almost teen age and is, getting into the games that his dad plays kind of thing. So it was a really nice range. Certainly people of different backgrounds, which was kind of cool as well. And yeah, we did a couple of masterclasses, which was really fun. So we did first at 1 o'clock, we did Metal Slug 2, which was pretty interesting because I sort of ran them, however long I really needed to, because we did 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, which I think was good because, having a bit of a range of classes, not everyone's going to learn or want to learn one. So we did Metal Slug 2, because obviously I know it quite well, funnily enough.
For anybody who's listening who doesn't know, Martin is the world record holder of Metal Slug 2. There is a bit of a theme going on at the moment, yeah.
I still want to beat that score. I still, that time that we did the other event and I somehow managed to absolutely smash my record. I'm like, well, now I know I can do it like that. I might need to do it again. But yeah, no, that was really fun actually. So I took some questions. I went through some of the mechanics as far as survivability, because obviously it's a pretty difficult game, especially if you're kind of picking it up casually. You die really easily, and so I teach that revered arcane trick of not dying. Is one of the main things. But also looking at scoring mechanics for all games like this is always quite interesting because they're not always apparent. And I mean, Tim will definitely be able to tell you about that for Sunset Riders and a bunch of other stuff, New Rally X, and we all have these things that we figure out, but a lot of the time it's really not apparent. You need to have someone tell you, and the information is handed down. So I did that for some stuff, and then I actually ran a playthrough for a father and son, and we actually finished the whole game as I was sort of calling stuff out and going, okay, this bit's the safe part, I can talk about the next bit, what's going to happen, there'll be these weapons so you guys can decide what you want and share it, and then kind of go through. And it was really fun. So there were a couple of people watching those two do that as well. They had a blast. They got to finish the game. Obviously we went through quite a few credits, but for those of you who don't know, the Retro Arcade Club, it's free play, so you can come in and finish those games that you might not normally be able to do, or might not have the spare dollar coins to do. So we did that. That was great. Really, really nice feedback as well. And then ran through in the main room. On the floor, we've got the original Mario Brothers arcade machine. So that was another one that I think that actually probably had a bit more interest because obviously everyone knows Mario. It's his first appearance with Luigi, and his first appearance as the main protagonist. So that was really interesting as well. We went through, we took a lot of questions, showed some tips on momentum, which is kind of an interesting mechanic in that game as well, which is very much in Super Mario Brothers and everything else afterwards. But seeing it there on essentially a left and right joystick was great fun. So yeah, no, it was really good feedback, I think, from everyone. Certainly keen to do the next one. But we haven't really talked about what games we want to sort of look at masterclasses on as well. So if anyone is listening in the comments and you have some ideas, or maybe people want to even have a little vote or something, just shout out, because we'd be interested to hear.
That's a really neat idea, actually. I should post that into the Facebook event for it as well, because people could vote, and that'd be fantastic. Excuse me. But yes, It's really awesome because the Retro Arcade Club is it happens on the last Sunday of every month. It's $20 per person entry fee, and it's 4 hours of free play arcade. So you basically get to walk around the arcade bar, play as many games as you like for as long as you like. If you want to complete Street Fighter 2's Time Crisis 2, now's your chance because you can just basically stay on it until you finish the game. Martin is very kindly doing masterclasses during the event as well. So if you do want to learn particular tips and tricks and play a game really well or learn how to play a game better or whatever, then Martin is your man. And it was great to do, obviously, Metal Slug 2 and Mario Brothers for the last event. The next one is on the 26th of June, Sunday. So you can buy your tickets already via the Eventbrite, which you can find on our Facebook, or I'll just put it on the screen here, and also our website if you want to grab tickets. And you can also pay on the door as well if you want to come in. But yeah, I'll put up the thing to choose what games people want to play next. Very quickly, we'll just get the test. We'll get the test cameo out the way. Are you going to say hello?
Hey, Tess.
Hi. She's got an Elsa and an Anna doll. They are new favorite things. She just watched Frozen 2, so she's very excited. But are you good? Do you have your dinner? Yeah? You gonna eat your dinner? No. Okay.
No. Mm. Hey, look, it's not an 89 podcast if we don't have a guest appearance from Tess.
A little test appearance. Yep, little cameo. I was just looking at the comments there very quickly. So Thick Big Daddy Tim, what is this? You guys have met Albo?
So,
what's going on?
Yeah.
Tell us.
That was okay. So on Saturday, we went out in the city for one of our mate Andrew's Bucks party, and we sort of weaved our way through the city. We visited a whole bunch of venues. We had a stop in at 89, which was really cool. We started at midday at the Bob Hawke Beer and Leisure Centre, and it just so happened that as we were arriving at midday, so was Anthony Albanese. And so he was doing like a whole promo thing there. So there were media people, and I ended up, one of my buses was a bit late. So I was about 5 minutes late and had to wait at the door while they made sure there was room and cleared it and all that. And so, yeah, well, we thought we were just going to have a bit of a meal and have a bit of a feed before we really got started. Happened to run into Anthony Albanese, who, in case you haven't noticed, Thick Pick is a little bit of a fan. And he spent the rest of the night telling everybody we met and everybody we saw that we met, Albo, so he was swooning like a teenage girl at the time.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant. And for any listeners who don't know who Albo is, he is now the new Prime Minister of Australia.
The much less shit Prime Minister, yeah.
So you just basically walked into a brewery and you were there with the Prime Minister of Australia. I don't think that would happen in the UK. I don't think that would happen anywhere else. It's a very Australian thing to happen, I think.
Compared to our last one, who walked into Engadine Macca's and shit his pants, Albo walks into a pub to get shit-faced instead, which is just so much infinitely cooler. So,
well, it was really funny because we tried to book and they were like, "Oh no, we're full, but we're doing some walk-ins. We might have some room." And we're like, "It's 12 o'clock on a Saturday. How are you this booked out?" And then we sort of realized.
Lucky Prawn as well, don't they?
What's that?
They've got the Lucky Prawn, the Chinese restaurant, the sort of 80s style.
Yeah.
I've not been to the Hawke's Brewery yet, but it looks incredible. It looks like they've done a great job.
I haven't actually gone. Like, the beer's okay, but I want to go for the decor,
the experience and everything.
Yeah.
So apart from Albo, Tim, was the brewery a good time? Like, was it a good visit?
Well, they got like their core range, and they had four other beers on tap as well, which they were calling one-hit wonders. I'm guessing is like their limited edition beers. It was serving a Lucky Prawn, which was good Chinese food. And it has got that very much 80s decor setup, which I think is paying good homage to Bob Hawke himself. But that was good. And I'm a big fan of Hawke's beers, so it's a good start.
I heard that they'd actually somehow got their hands on some of the Hawke estate furniture, some of the stuff that was literally in his living room, and that was like part of the draw card.
They might have. There was a back room where I think was like an extra part of the restaurant, but that was pretty much just blocked off because I think that's where he was eating and had his media and did his interviews and that there. So
yeah, that's where you scull a pint.
James yelled at him to scull it, but because he's poured a beer, then he's had a sip, and James is like, "Finish it off." But
amazing.
I don't think that's what PMs do anymore.
I mean, was there like a ton of security there? Was there like a load of security guards and all that kind of stuff? Because he's the Prime Minister, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's just
there was, I guess in a way, not really. I mean, as we were coming out, James went up, congratulated him, and shook his hand, and we got selfies with him and things like that. So it's, like, I guess there's probably more security than you'd expect to see in a place like that at 12 o'clock on a Saturday.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it wasn't crazy over the top. So,
Like big burly guys with sunglasses just standing around, kind of like looking at everybody, all that kind of stuff. Like, sorry, can you stand back? No, it's incredible. It's so incredible. Yeah. But that's like, I've heard all the stories of that. He's a big Inner West fan. You know what I mean? Like, he's been coming to like local breweries and local bars and supporting Inner West businesses. He hasn't been to 89 yet.
Hasn't he?
Sorry?
I think he's been the Marrickville MP forever.
Oh, yeah, true.
Long
yeah, true.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah, because he plays like the community cup and stuff, and you see him at gigs, like Celebrate Rifles fan, and you used to see him in band shirts and stuff on the weekends and all that.
What a guy! What a guy!
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a crazy start to the day.
That's wicked.
It's
that is wicked.
If James was telling the strippers at 1 o'clock in the morning, it's like, yes, who we met. And it's like,
Brilliant.
Oh man.
So that's what you've been up to then, Tim. You've been hanging out with the Prime Minister of Australia.
As you do.
As you do. Fair enough. That's awesome. I've just got to do another quick 89 plug before we move on. The VHS Flea Pit is back. So anybody who loves trash movies and wants to come and watch trash low-budget films, screened directly off of VHS in their wonderful 4x3 fuzzy format, please check out the VHS Flea Pit. I think the next screening is on the... going to get this wrong. I think it's on the 21st of June. It's on Tuesday nights every 2 weeks, and it's free. So if you like trash cinema from the 80s and 90s, want to come to a free night to be surrounded by other like-minded film fans, please check out the VHS Flea Pit. It has a Facebook page now, so www.facebook.com/VHS Flea Pit. And I think the next film's going to be The Wizard.
Yes,
so
and it is Tuesday the 21st of June. You're right.
So, awesome. I should have done my research. But yeah, it's a great night. So if you want to come see The Wizard, which arguably is a wonderful fit for 89 because it's the movie that stars. What's his name? Is it from the Wonder Years or is it the other guy?
Fred Savage.
Fred Savage, that's right. And I think Mario Brothers 3 is a big part of the film. I think that's the game they play at the end.
So it was they had like footage of it on a screen in the movie, and that was the first time North American audiences would have seen that. So, which is kind of cool, kind of an Easter egg pre-internet where people apparently lost their mind. They were like, what? Do you remember
those
cool.
days? Do you remember those days when things like that used to happen? You used to have to hear about it from somebody else or read about it in a magazine or not be able to like just
bullshit. And then,
yeah, you lying, no way. And then then suddenly you experience it for yourself and like, oh my god, that's amazing. I miss those days, guys. I miss those days of like discovering things where you couldn't just look things up on the internet.
It's funny actually. Maz and Finn and I were walked back from Newtown today, and we were kind of reminiscing on the old Blockbuster that used to be on Emmore Road, which is long gone now, but that we both used to go to before we knew each other. And funnily enough, we realised it would have been at the same time. So, but yeah, it was that sort of, I don't know, kind of funny because obviously Stranger Things, all of that. It's all very visible in pop culture right now. But then you think about Stranger Things itself, and it's like, they just all get dumped. Or in this season, half of the episodes get dumped or whatever. And then you watch them in 2 days, and it's like, that's done. But the old drip feeding and having to find physical copies of stuff on VHS and that kind of thing. It is, I do kind of miss it. Hey. But funnily enough, actually, I kind of, as I was frantically scrambling for a mic lead, I ended up finding about half of the VHS that I have in a box in my collection. It's like, oh man, I should talk to Tom about, like, none of them, like, he's going to have a better collection. He'll probably have a lot of them as well. But I did hilariously find a VHS of, I don't know how many people out there would know Classroom Video. If you're in Australia, it was like educational films kind of thing for high school students about high school kid things. And I was in a couple of them, and I just found a copy of one of them at least, which
we need to put these on the internet. We need to put these on the internet right now.
I don't think they are, but
put it on YouTube.
Let's see. I mean, like, it looks like a crappy high school VHS.
Going veg.
But, yeah.
That's brilliant.
Nutrition, Part 1. So,
my gosh,
that's
wow.
That's going to have to go up one night as well.
Did you actually go veggie after making that? Was it a life-changing experience where you're like, yep, I need to now just be a vegetarian?
Well, funnily enough, I actually did start, I was becoming vegetarian, and that's part of the reason I got asked to join that, because I'd already been doing that drama stuff. And then, like, someone's mum worked for them, and then they just kind of, it just kind of happened. It was a few things sort of all coming together, and a few of us from Katoomba High ended up being in it, so which was fun. It was cool. But and then it didn't last very long as far as the vegetarianism, because I'm a big guy, and it was at that point probably early noughties, and I just was ravenous, and also smoking a lot of weed, I think, as well. So I think I needed a bit more of everything. But,
man,
I've got a few things to go through that we should definitely watch. And I did find this Jane Fonda's new workout as well.
That's amazing. I have that. We have that sleeve on the wall at 89. So on our VHS wall, we have the Jane Fonda's workout as part of that. Yeah, 100%. It's great. Might be hidden by an arcade machine.
Clamshell.
Yep. Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
But yeah, it's a really floppy clamshell, and also the VHS case is quite soft. But yeah.
Not if you watch the film, though.
No, that's very true.
That's incredible. We'll definitely have to do that. Maybe we'll just got before a screening before one of the VHS flea pit screenings. We'll have to screen your high school become a veggie thing.
Look,
when you're
I don't
there,
know how
and then we get.
It is.
How long is it? I guess that's some more of the point. If it's
16 minutes. And
that's fine.
7 to 12. So I think everyone will be it'll be age appropriate for everyone there. That'll be fine. Yeah.
That's perfect. What else is going on? I want to get all of the plugs out the way. So what else? I forgot.
I was going to say, I hear there's a few people from 89 involved in finally releasing their own beer soon. So
yeah, Forgotten Worlds. The Forgotten Worlds brewing company is finally. I shouldn't say finally. We've been working pretty hard behind the scenes, but we've got our brew, which is going to be canned and kegged early July. We were meant to have a launch party this weekend, just gone, but we've had to push it back to July 13th, just because we're perfectionists and we want the beer to be the best thing in the world ever. So we just had to delay it a little bit. But yeah, we're getting prepped up and ready for that. So if you haven't followed us already, then Forgotten Worlds on Facebook, and also we have a website which is a work in progress at the moment. We'll have a full website releasing soon, which is www.forgottenworlds.com.au. But yeah, and hopefully in a couple of podcasts time, I'll have some more information to share. But at the moment, we're looking forward to canning and kegging, and we're looking forward to getting a few more arcade bars behind us in terms of the launch and getting the beer pouring around Australia for July 15th. And we just did a Kickstarter, and that was amazing. Martin, thank you very much for backing the Kickstarter, which is basically enabling us to get some of our merchandise, our initial merchandise out there. So posters, T-shirts, enamel pins, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things happening, but I have no real concrete things to share right now. But yes, thank you, Martin. I did want to give a little shout out for the July 15th party. So if you're at a loose end on Friday, July 15th evening, come to 89 Arcade Bar and please try our beer, the Cathode Ray Hazy Pale Ale, or check out the website or the Facebook to learn a bit more about what that is all about. But yeah, it should be really fun, man. It's just, yeah.
It's going to be great. And Courier's knocked it out of the park with the design as well.
The artwork is incredible. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, our brewer Dan is going to knock the beer out of this world into the forgotten world. It's going to be pretty incredible. So I'm looking forward to us getting that done and getting it out there. Oh man, but it's so funny you mentioning Stranger Things, because I was going to talk about like things that have been going on, watching, playing, and all that kind of stuff. And I think you and I had a similar experience of Stranger Things season 4, where we just basically binge watched the entire thing. It's incredible, man. I love it. I mean, I'm glad they've split it in 2 halves.
Yeah, well, this is what I was saying about the the temptation to binge. And Maz and I actually decided to just watch like 1 episode per night to really lengthen it out, so we could kind of relive that kind of vibe. And I think, bearing in mind it's very retro inspiration, it was kind of nice to do it like that as well. And yes, of course, there were 7 episodes. We have to wait for more. And yeah, I'm kind of glad, because I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm not a huge need to binge new series of whatever on streaming service X or Y, but that's something that I really look forward to. So
yeah. Oh man, I love the fact they've split it into 2 halves as well. So we've got like a whole other half of the season to look forward to in July, because it'd be sad if there wasn't something to look forward to with Stranger Things 4. But I just love the fact that this season's just like so horror orientated. They've really just gone like full on into the horror, and it feels more like its own thing, rather than like worrying about throwbacks and like doing a lot of throwback to 80s culture. They've actually just gone, this is a horror series, and they've got these really great stories all happening in tandem that are going to tie up so well when they get through to the second half. But like it's just so good. We can't really talk about it without spoiling anything. I think that's a problem with this season, because there's so many things going on that if we start talking about it, you kind of give things away. But by the time we got to the
big bad is kind of like Vecna, is the character. Just even saying his name isn't a big giveaway. But as someone who was a big classic D&D player, played a lot of modules like this back in the day, still play. Vecna is a big bad of the Forgotten Realms. And because I was sort of like, oh, what are they going to go with next? Like, and when that happened, it was just like, oh my fucking god! And Maz is like, who's Vecna? And I like ran and got a bunch of old D&D books, and after we watched that first episode, I'm like, and this happened, and this happened, and he gets his hand cut off and his eye taken out, and then people can put them on themselves, and then they like almost turn into him, and it's like sick. And all of that, just like big nerd gushing, and it's like, that's so cool that a show can do that so easily.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh man, so I think I could not, from a non Dungeons and Dragons player, I did really like the fact they did tie it in to that. I understood what they were doing, and how it was like the kids almost had to give the bad guy a name, and that's how they end up calling him that, and how that tied in quite nicely. But I just think he's really good. I need to watch the first season again, because I'm not quite the retconning aspect of it. I'm not too sure about, but I'm not that close to Stranger Things, and it doesn't really bug me that they've retconned maybe a couple of things. Again, can't really talk about that much without spoiling it, but it's it is good. Tim, have you been watching it, or?
I have not. No, I've never really. I just haven't watched any of it, so I can't say I've watched and disliked. I just haven't really watched. So
yeah.
What about The Boys? Have you been watching The Boys? Has anybody else watched The Boys?
I haven't, but I'm actually really fucking keen to, because friends were talking about it last night, and again, sounds up my alley, and I fucking love Carl Urban. Like,
he steals the show like every season. Him and the guy who plays Homelander, like the main soup villain, like it's just incredible. Okay, well I won't bore anything or spoil anything for you guys, but if you ever can borrow somebody's Amazon Prime account, just watch The Boys. It's amazing.
That's what I gotta do. Yeah, 100%. I'm keen to do that.
It's so good.
I mean, because I didn't get any spoilers from my friends, but first episode, first scene, just sets the brutality level, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm definitely keen for that. But
sorry.
No, that's all good. Tess, are you gonna watch The Boys?
Are you gonna? I don't think you're old enough to watch The Boys. You just watched Elsa, though, didn't you? Do you like Elsa?
I picked water.
Oh yeah. Where's your water?
I picked water.
Okay. I'm being told off. Okay, there we go. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, no, it's really good. Yeah, like it's a wonderful sort of flip on the superhero genre. Like, doesn't take itself too seriously. It's just gross, out there, gory as horrific, but hilarious at the same time. Yeah, so I really recommend The Boys. It's really, really good. And I've forgotten. It's a bit like what Disney Plus are doing. With Kenobi and all their shows and all the Marvel shows. Again, they're not dropping everything at once. So new episodes are out on Friday. So I kind of like, I think Netflix don't do that because people are so used to the Netflix format of like, here's the whole thing, binge it when you want to. Whereas I think if they did that, they'll get some backlash. But yeah, so every Friday there's a new episode of Boys season 3, but it's great. It's so good. It's so good.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Netflix, actually. And I mean, I know probably most people are all over this because it's already happening in the States, but the, the tiered membership that's going to be happening from September with the advertising, even if you're obviously paying as well, but then there's the super extra membership where you still don't get them.
Yeah,
it's going to hit them hard. So maybe that's why they're not risking it, and they're just going to try and keep people happy in every other way by just dumping and letting people binge. So
yeah, true. Yeah, it's interesting how these streaming services keep changing and trying to up their game or reformat what they want to do and how they want to do it. Yeah, it's there's so many of them as well. It's like still almost too many like out there. But yeah, anyway.
Oh, totally. I mean, like, you may as well be paying for fucking cable now, so...
True.
Although, don't, because it's terrible and you're still giving Rupert Murdoch money, so don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Don't do what Donnie Don't does.
I am checking my notes. I think I have done all my plugging. Forgotten Worlds, Flea Pip, the Retro Arcade Club, the 2 Nintendo 64s are on the floor of 89. I think I already talked about in the last episode that pretty much all our games are working in the bar now, which I know sounds like it should be a given, but when you run a Retro Arcade bar, and these games are from way back when, they take a lot of love, care, and caressing to keep them running. So I think everything on the floor is now working, including our Killer Instinct, and we now have Asterix on the floor as well. So if you haven't played Asterix, I highly recommend. It's really good fun. Really good fun.
Yeah, we got to have a brief play when we did the Golden Axe stream.
Yes.
Yeah, for the Sega event with Stephen.
With Stephen.
Got it in then.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. It's a really interesting, big sprite beat 'em up, but it's the fight mechanics are kind of cool, and you can run up to people who are stunned and slap them about a bit, and it's like great. It's so perfect. It's so like the comic. They've brought that over quite well.
I'm trying to remember because hold on, because. Well, Martin, isn't that funny that we're talking about Asterix, which is made by a publisher called Konami?
Oh, look at that tie-in. Fantastic.
And there's another game that was made by Konami, who are incredible. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, produced a lot of incredible side-scrolling games in a lot of different genres. But there is a game they made called Sunset Riders, which came out in 1991 and is a great Western run-and-gun shooter. Should we talk about Sunset Riders?
Oh, I think that would be a wonderful idea.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And I mean, well, yeah, Ben, yeah, you're right. 1991, Konami obviously have a long and proud tradition of beat 'em ups. Obviously, the Asterix, and the game that the bar is named after, the Teenage Mutant
Hero Turtles. Yeah,
from '89. The old X-Men as well, to beat 'em up there, which was fantastic game as well, and of course the Simpsons 4-player as well. But I mean, well, yeah, Sunset Riders. Its pedigree is kind of interesting as well because it was directed by Hideyuki Sugimoto, who was a programmer on Contra, and wrote Super Contra, wrote and directed Super Contra actually as well. And he, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that Contra was worked on with Motoaki Furukawa, who wrote the music. And Motoaki Furukawa has a really interesting backstory as well, as far as what he worked on as well. So, the Metal Gear series, the Super Smash Brothers series, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. But
So this is the musician, the guy who wrote the music, wrote music for all those games. Holy crap, that's awesome!
Yeah, like huge prolific career. So I mean, you would expect something to be good between them, but this was kind of interesting because Cowboys just kind of weren't done after the sort of 50s movies. They were kind of left alone, and then it was like ninjas and other stuff and whatnot. So there was kind of a resurgence at the time in some pop culture stuff. And there were other games as well that sort of came a little bit before or a little bit after. So Mad Dog McCree was out in 1990. So there was a little bit there, which was a full motion light gun game, which is really fun. Wild Gunman, of course, which a lot of people would remember as well. And Wild Guns later, which was like a sort of Cabal style shooter where you're sort of ducking back and forth and whatnot, but you're essentially clearing a single screen. But yeah, as far as beat 'em ups, there wasn't really anything cowboy beat 'em up beforehand.
But would you say this is a beat 'em up or a run and gun like Metal Slug? Because you don't really beat anybody up; you kind of shoot them.
It is a run and gun. You're right. I guess
but
I beat 'em up.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Like Konami kind of are known for their like 4-player, big sprites, very colorful, amazing beat 'em ups. But this was actually their foray into like the run and gun genre.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, like it's funny you talk about the sprite size and whatnot as well, because I would say they're quite reserved in that sense for a Konami game. But the platforming elements that they put in is something that makes it quite compelling as well. And as Tim was doing the world record run there, he was kind of sharing when he was comfortable enough to talk at certain points in the game. We also had Riss doing commentary as well, who has obviously watched you do countless runs as you've been practicing for the record. But Tim, like, did you want to talk about that as far as a design perspective for this game? Because you're no stranger to a running gun, but
yeah, I found it really, really interesting that, like, I think to begin with, when you first pick it up, it almost feels like a Metal Sluggy type game, but there's really like a lot of differences, a lot of just different, not really mechanics, but just the way the game is played. And I think it's very easy, just the first time you play it, to be like, oh, this is just a Metal Slug clone. They've just put cowboys in instead. But as you go along, it's got sort of the multiple level systems, and there's a lot of interesting mechanics as to when you can jump and sort of bullets will pass through you and when they won't. And sort of learning how that's sort of specifically done by design is really a big part of getting around that. But in terms of like the actual level design, I feel like they didn't try and go too over the top. It's pretty, you can tell that it all takes place in the same world. It's not like they're sort of hopping from, first they're in the outback, then they're in space and all these different crazy environments. And I sort of like that. It helped feel like you were really building up, like you were almost on a quest where you're going from point A to point B, rather than just world one beat, where's the next level, where's the next level.
Yeah, it definitely tells a story, I think, as far as how it's written, which is quite cool. And there are points, I think, even at the end of the first level with Simon Greedwell, where he's just like, bury me with my money.
Bury me with my money.
It's such a cool little thing, right? And I mean, not that every boss in the game is memorable in that sense, but there certainly are a lot of memorable fights there. Obviously, Chief Wigwam and that whole level, and the platforming on that changes quite dramatically as well. But that's really brutal, and the whole thing where I think we talked about this on the stream, but like I think his sister, like just before you kill him, his sister runs out going like, no, don't kill him, he was just following orders. And it's like, well, you could have told us that like before we climbed this mountain, or we started your whole tribe.
34 bullets in him and then just stopped before the 35th, because that was the one that would have done it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, and all his dead relatives now as well.
Yeah,
Just following orders. Yeah.
So awkward. Yeah, for sure. But,
It's
what's the name of the final boss again?
So Richard Rose.
Sir Richard Rose. Yeah.
That's right.
Somehow he
Yeah.
got knighted, then lost his way.
Yeah. Like so many others before him.
I'm a big fan of all the little one-liners because every boss has their own little one-liner and sort of, some are more memorable than others, but they've all got their own, which I really like.
And it's all digitized speech as well, right? In all of them, like "Bury Me My Money" and all this kind of stuff. It's all done in speech rather than just speech bubbles on screen, right?
Yeah,
there is actually that audio. Yeah.
Oh, so when you beat the Smith brothers, and the girls come out and dance for you, they do their little one-liner, which is she goes, you boys are so kind. And then like text appears on the screen, sort of introducing the second act.
Yeah.
But all the little one-liners are just digitized.
I've always found that really weird, like talking about the structure of the game. So obviously we're a 4-player run and gun game, very much like Contra, where you can pick your characters. We should definitely talk about the characters at some point because they're awesome. And also, what character you pick to play also changes how you play the game to some degree. But like I always found that really interesting in terms of like the way this game works. So you have like, what is it, the first couple of levels where you are cowboys after the bounty of some bad guy. That's the structure of the game. But yeah, you're right. When you take on those brothers and you save these girls from these 2 brothers, suddenly the game becomes something a little bit different where you see all 4 bounties you've got to do to progress to the end of the game. And it's like a weird turning point in the structure of the game, or not the gameplay, but the actual narrative.
My theory on that is I think it's set up like when you sort of beat the Smith brothers and rescue the girls, like that's supposed to be the end of the game. Because that text that actually comes up, it says, "I'll tell you a secret. There's a huge bounty being offered for Sir Richard Rose, but he's always got his 3 sidekicks with him, so you'll need to dispatch of them first." And then like the next scene will have like the wanted picture with the 3 sidekicks underneath them. So that's how they sort of introduced that. But I think it was designed so you're supposed to think you kill the Smith brothers, the girls come out and dance, well done, you've beaten the game. And then they're like, surprise, we have more bosses.
More things. Do the more things. Yeah.
I just realized that is the storyline of El Topo by Alejandro Jodorowsky.
Oh, really? I've got the box set of all his movies. I've not watched that one yet.
Seriously just occurred to me just then. It's like that is 100% it. It's like, you get told there's like the 3 masters you got to kill before you fight the final guy kind of thing. But there's probably a lot less like his son randomly nude wearing a cowboy hat following him around as he does it and then leading a bunch of mutants out of a cave at the end.
It's a shame they didn't do that for this game. That could have upped the ante a little bit, or did it in they should have done a sequel.
Yeah, it needs more mutants. Well, do we want to talk about a sequel? I don't know if we talked about it.
Is there a sequel?
Well, no, there's no official sequel. But in 1992, the Cowboys of Moo Mesa was released on Konami, and it is very much... I don't know if it was actually the same director, but it was very much a spiritual successor. And this is, obviously still like pretty peak arcade times. And as far as a commercial success, I'm not really sure for Sunset Riders like how much money it would have made historically or anything like that. I certainly don't have figures handy. But the Cowboys of Moo Mesa was like a fucking... Like they really did attempt to make it a cash cow. Like it had a Saturday morning cartoon. It had action figures that were designed by the guy who did a lot of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures as well. They had cereal. They had like a bunch of random shit that just to try and make money, like peak 90s capitalism. But the game, like the actual game was, so it was still 4 players. It was still cowboys, but you were literally a cowboy. And a lot of similarities in gameplay style, but much more cartoonish and much more, I suppose, like surreal. But if you haven't played it, it's on a lot of the Pandora's boxes, so it's probably buried somewhere. But a highly enjoyable game. You've also got besides your usual stuff like your slides like you have in Sunset Riders. You can also do like a double tap run and charge with your horns as well. But yeah, check it out. It's actually pretty cool.
And was that an arcade only release or?
I think it might have got a Super Nintendo release. I think. But I didn't actually take notes on this. This is just something that I found out after we did the world record, and I kind of read into because it was kind of really interesting.
Because sorry, after you.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm just looking it up now, and it actually wasn't the same guys. It was Konami, but it wasn't the same team. It was released in November 1992, and it was 1 to 4 players in the same way. For Sunset Riders as well, because there were obviously 2-player versions and 4-player versions of Sunset Riders as well, depending on the cab.
See, I would still love to. It's my ambition to.
Mommy, Daddy.
I know, baby. I don't know where Mummy is. She's got to be somewhere. Where's Mummy? You going to find Mummy?
No.
Okay.
Daddy's playing this.
It's still my ambition because we obviously have the 2-player. We have the 2-player arcade at the bar. I would love to get a 4-player cabinet at some point. I have a 4-player LAI cabinet that's empty in my father-in-law's garage. I'd love to eventually one day convert that into a 4-player Sunset Riders, but that's a way off project right now, unfortunately. But when it happens, fellas, we'll get together and we'll play that game 4 players because that would be incredible to play at 4 players. You know what I mean?
I'm very keen.
It's actually really interesting when you play multiple players on it. When you get to the bosses, it calculates how much you each hit the boss, but it doesn't then score accordingly. So if the boss is worth 10,000 points and you guys hit 30% each and I hit 40%, I get 10,000 points and you get 0. So if you're playing with like other people purely going for a high score, it creates this really interesting dynamic because a lot of the bosses you want to clear the minions first. But if it's sort of a who can put the most hits on him, just is very interesting.
Fascinating actually because it really feeds into that that bounty hunter vibe where you are vying against each other even though you're not messing physically with each other in the game. In something like, let's say Mario Brothers, where you can do that. I was going to ask about that, and so it is just based on the hits that you get through the boss fight.
It's based on damage done.
Okay.
So which is
final hit.
Yes, which is slightly different to hits on them because the pistols I think they do more damage per shot.
Because they're hitting just one area, so they kind of account for that.
Yeah. Actually, I haven't checked that. It might be worth checking, but...
Well, I was actually just about to ask as well, as far as... because, you've seen a lot of other run and guns. Metal Slug's a great example where there's actually no difference in gameplay at all when whatever character you pick in any of those games in the series. But obviously Sunset Riders is earlier, but there's probably 2 main variations, right? Because you've got the shotgun guys and the dual pistol guys. And I mean, between those, because there's 2 shotgun guys, 2 pistol guys, there's no variation there, really.
Kind of. So that there isn't in the way it plays. So they both have the pistols, they both have the shotguns, they are identical weapons. But what it does change, and this is getting really finicky, but this is what I found when I was trying to push for high scores and things, is when you come up against the boss, who you're playing will line up with according to their player. So player 1 will line up on the very left, player 2 slightly in, player 3 right, and then player 4 on the very right. And it's a slight difference in where they start for player 3 and player 4. And I found player 4 there's a couple of bosses where they will have a better shot on some of those early minions that can really set you up for the rest of that boss fight, as opposed to player 3 who almost has to either move right or aim to the right because he doesn't start on the very edge of the screen. So gameplay with the 2, they're identical. The guns are exactly the same and there's no variation, but where they start for the bosses it's a small thing, but getting into a sequence early on some of those bosses is very important.
So because Kamano Wild and Bob are the two shotgun guys, is it? I believe the green guy and the red guy.
Yeah, it's definitely green,
Yeah.
green and red.
I find it it's so weird how, like, sorry to interrupt, but like with the 4 characters, how 2 of them have surnames and 2 of them don't. So you've got so the 4 characters are Steve, Billy Cool, Bob, and Komano Wild. So those are the 4 characters.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny because I play as Kamano Wild before I knew that, only because he's called Kamano Wild and he's got a shotgun. I'm like, well, yeah, and a poncho.
And he has a poncho and a hat. He's got the whole thing.
Yeah,
he's the best.
living
He's
his
the
best
best.
life. It's great.
Yeah.
It's going to be me in the future. Yeah, for sure.
Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say the only other thing that marks him out in gameplay is Kamano Wild when he when you kill, was it level 6 boss? He takes his hat.
Dark Horse. No, not Dark Horse. No, it's not Dark Horse at all. It's what's that guy's name?
I can't remember his name.
Okay, hold on. I've got a list of the wanted outlaws here. So the first one is Simon Greedwell. Bury me with my money. So next one is Hawkeye Hank Hatfield. Then Dark Horse. That's the guy who's on the horse. Yeah. Then you have the Smith brothers. Then you have El Greco. Then you have
It's El Greco. Yeah.
Chief Scalpham.
Yeah.
It's the Native American tribe leader.
who's racially sensitive there. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I think we'll talk about the ports later on, but I think this was this was tweaked for the ports. Then you have Paco Loco, and then you have Sir Richard Rose, who is the main villain. I actually have a note. Sorry, after you.
Oh no, I was just going to say, talking about the Smith brothers fight, because that's actually the only level. I think it's level 4. That's the only level that is just a boss fight as well, and has that story arc. And talking about how that seems to be kind of the end of the initial part of the story as well. It's kind of a cool little punctuation point, smack bang in the middle.
Yeah.
But sorry, Ben, what were you going to say?
Well, I'm cheating here because I'm reading some stuff off of Wikipedia, because obviously I want to come across really knowledgeable in the podcast, but also like it's a really good reference. But Paco Loco is the guy with the Gatling gun, and apparently once he's been killed, his last words are "Hasta la bye bye," which was a direct reference to the T-800's main catchphrase in the Terminator 2. Movie, which is obviously Hasta la Vista.
Maybe. I figured it had to be. It seemed weird to not be linked to that. But
little link there.
Especially because he does it with the Arnie accent as well.
Oh, yeah.
That's true. Hasta la bye-bye. Hasta la bye-bye. Well, look, I think we haven't actually mentioned how big your score was for Sunset Riders, but also we should talk about that, because I just want to throw in very quickly, Sunset Riders is one of those games that I've been in love with for years. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I played it in an arcade, and I didn't know what it was, but it always stuck in my mind. I just remembered it as this really colorful, bright, side-scrolling cowboy and Indians game that was just really fun to play, really fun to look at. I'm a really big fan of Gunsmoke, which is another arcade-based Western. And if we're talking about arcade Westerns, there's not a lot of them. There is another game called Blood Brothers, which is a bit like Cabal, where you're like on the bottom of the screen, you have like a viewfinder. But Gunsmoke was one of my other favorite Westerns, and it was like a bird's eye view, sort of like top scrolling shooter. What have you got? You got your kitty cat? Yeah, you got your kitty cat. We got a Kiki's Delivery Service kitty cat, which was Tessie's new gift.
Very nice.
That Mark bought her this weekend. Mark and Jane got you that, didn't they? Yeah.
Very nice.
And that Gunsmoke is very similar in terms of the game. Each level is based on you getting a bounty for obviously an outlaw, and the beginning of each level has that bounty poster, the same as Sunset Riders. But when I obviously started collecting PCBs for 89, I was always like, I've got to get a Sunset Riders. Like, I've got to get it, because it's one of those random games that I don't think a lot of people really know, but I love, and I just love to have it in the arcade. I have the Super Nintendo port, and that's the version I bought years and years ago. But when I got that PCB, I was so happy. And like, when I put it in the bar, I was like, hey, have you guys played Sunset Riders, and it was just so much fun to see so many people get into it. But Tim, at what point did you think you would go for the world record in Sunset Riders? And before you tell us, I would just like to let everybody know that on the 1st of May, Tim's world record score was what, 806,390. So what's that? 806,390. That's an incredible score. Tim, tell us why you thought you want to do this with your life.
Well, it was sort of funny actually. You got me hooked on the game. So I'd never played Sunset Riders before until coming to the bar. I was there one day, and
as an arcade owner, my work is done. That's all I'm here to do.
And I think I got hooked on it pretty quickly, but I feel like it's got a bit of a steep learning curve. Some of the earlier bosses and things like that. Like once, if you can sort of learn the patterns, they get far easier to beat. And I remember it was even Dark Horse I was struggling with, and you were like, "Why don't you just jump to this one?" I'm like, "Oh, that's much easier." And just things like that. And I think where I actually really started playing it a lot was I was playing it a lot, and it was, I think the first time it popped up onto the arcade floor was probably maybe 6 months before Battle of the Arcades last year. And at the time, so this was sort of leading into and then after Battle of the Arcades, and it might have just been a throwaway comment, and you said, "Oh, maybe we should put Sunset Riders in next year's Battle of the Arcade." And I sort of went, "Well, if that's going to be the case, I got a head start. I'll play this game a lot more." And then it went from a game that I really loved to a game that I just really fell in love with, and just love learning all the little different tricks and things like that. And I was very, very determined to beat the whole game, and I finally did, and then realized that it starts again. I was like, well, shit, here we go then. So that sort of gave it an even bigger challenge and things like that. And yeah, and then it was about that time when I was sort of having a bit of a look at some of the world record scores and things like that, and saw what Sunset Riders was, and saw that there just really weren't that many scores out there. And then I think as well, in one of our chats, Stephen put up some scores for Game the System. I think they did Sunset Riders, and looking at those scores and looking where I was at, and it sort of made me realize that I don't think there are that many people who have really beaten the whole game through really chasing scores. There's more of a speedrun community for Sunset Riders than just pure high score chasing. But
can you remember what the arcade high score was in Twin Galaxies before you destroyed it?
22,000 and change.
Yeah.
So,
20,000. Wow.
Amber McAnally, 20,920. Yeah.
So what year was that set?
97? No, it wasn't 97. Maybe it was.
It was a long time ago, like 20 years plus.
See, that's the incredible thing about Sunset Riders. It's just a game that I don't think a lot of people really know, and I think that in the high scoring community, I mean, speedrunning community, sure, but the high scoring community, I find it amazing that was the high score for that long for this game, considering how much fun this game is to play.
I think part of it might be, I guess a lot of things, like when you're talking about like PCB stuff, quite often, there's not as many of some things that survive, and then it might take a long time to get like even something like an emulation. Sometimes it can take a while, or it's not faithful, so you don't really want to use it for doing an arcade record because it's not the arcade version. That could definitely be a thing.
The MAME score is massive and quite competitive. I think it's over 1 million, and there's 2 or 3 scores on that leaderboard that are over 1 million. So there is quite the main version of it has got quite a bit of competition. So maybe there's just not that many like original arcade boards out there at the moment.
That's very true. I didn't really think about that aspect of it. That's interesting that they're over 1 million. Having played the game and got that score, the 800,000, I mean, what would it take to get 1 million points on Sunset Riders?
You'd have to double loop it and beat that high score. You'd need to get 100% on the three of the 4 bonus stages at a minimum. And the bonus stages are very, very difficult to perfect because it is all random.
There's a certain amount that's like pre-programmed, and then it's random after.
It is, but it's so that the first 8 are random, and I think of the first 8 as like almost a calibration because it does one in each direction, in a different order for the first and the second one, and then after that it's sort of ordered in the way that so it'll come out as one at a time, one at a time, one at a time, then it'll jump to sort of 2 at a time, 2 at a time, 2 at a time. So there's that pattern, but where they're coming out is just completely random.
And for people at home who have never played Sunset Riders, the bonus stages are essentially almost like a first-person shooting stage where it's a set camera and these cowboys pop up at different points in the screen, and they're basically facing you, and you've got to push the 8-way joystick either up, down, left, right, diagonal, wherever these guys pop up, and shoot them. And the thing starts very slowly and goes around the screen, and then these guys pop up really quickly, and you've kind of got to know the patterns, right? It's the same pattern for each one. So if you can learn the patterns that they appear, you can get better at it. Or is it random after they've done the full circle? It's random.
After they do the full circle, it's random. And there's been some times where I feel it like, especially on the second stage, where it's almost like I think I know what's coming next. And as soon as I try and predict it, I am wrong. So I think there might be like some sort of patterns, like when they're doing the 2, where it might be if this guy appears here, the next one will be here, or if this one's here, then it'll be there, and that way. But it's still, there's no real, you can't just go in and go, I know where they're all coming from, which makes, and the hardest part of that, so it's not too sort of hard to keep up at a very good score. The last one is they'll pop 3 guys out at a time, and they're the ones where it is very, very difficult to hit all 3. And it's sort of, which is really interesting because the first bonus stage has 2 sets of triplets and the second bonus stage only actually has 1. So I've actually found the second bonus stage slightly easier to get 100% on.
And very quickly, guys, sorry, this is for my own education as well. So the fact that you can loop the game, which essentially means that once you finished it, it starts again from the beginning. I guess that score would only be valid if you're doing a 1 credit clear of the 2 loops, right? No continues. Yeah. To get that.
And Sunset Riders is a game where if you put in another credit, you don't lose your score. So in theory, you could keep putting in credit to get to the end and have that score of 1 million plus. But Twin Galaxies, it does specify it's got to be on 1 credit.
Yeah. Do you think that would be the next thing, Tim? You loot the game twice on 1 credit and see if you can get over 1 million points? Just putting it out there.
That's definitely what I'm chasing. Nice. But I was talking to you about this when I went for the world record run, because I've obviously got a Pandora's box here that I was practicing on a bit for, but the joysticks for the one in the arcade just feel slightly different. And if I've been playing it a lot on arcade, I'll go to Pandora's box and just suck.
Yeah.
So I haven't really been playing it at all at home. It's just been in the arcade. And I haven't been in there as much as I would like to be for the past few weeks. But
I know that feeling,
dude. It's all good. I think that's a lot of people. A lot of people have been doing that. It's fine. It's fine.
That's definitely the next goal that I want to get is I want to be able to 1 credit clear both loops.
That'd be incredible. That'll be so incredible.
We will also. I mean, it's seemed like forever off for ages kind of thing, like that it's far in the distance, but we are going to have the Battle of the Arcades coming up as well. That we're all going to be practicing it. As well, so certainly worth talking about the gameplay for sure, and even that early stuff. And I mean, for anyone listening, obviously we can, you can go and watch the actual run as well, which is really fascinating, and Riss certainly offers a lot of insight there. I think as you play. Certainly more than me, as far as the actual patterns and whatnot. There's a lot there, small things that change, like difficulty ramps up if you have more lives, especially for Chief Scalpum. Certain amount of projectiles appear. And also that second loop of the game, I should say the first loop, second time you're playing the game on the same credit. The enemies start appearing more randomly, don't they?
So the enemies appear at the exact same spot that in the first loop. There's the exact same amount of enemies, just they fire a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So
right.
For a lot of the enemies, you can know exactly where they are and shoot at them, but in the time it'll take your projectile to travel across the screen, they will still be able to fire a bullet back at you. And so the first time you get up to that loop, and it's killed me in a lot of spots that I normally wouldn't die, because it's just, you're not used to dodging bullets in that area, because you start to learn the patterns of where they are. So you're shooting them and go, he won't get a shot, he won't get a shot. And then all of a sudden one of them does. And so it's really, it makes that second loop really tricky, where you do have to be basically always ready to dodge bullets. And that become a part of, as I was playing it more, as you're going through, especially with some of the horse stages, certain ways that you move, assuming that they'll get a shot off. And if they don't, it doesn't matter. But if they do, then you're in the right position, because the horse stage is one where you can get trapped
very easily. The second level in particular is just the difficulty rate on that when you're learning the game is probably enough to put quite a few people off, I imagine.
Yeah,
it's tricky. And sorry guys, just to let everybody know, when we're talking about Riss is Tim's wife, who has been wonderful in helping Tim achieve his world record, but also joined Martin in commentating on Tim's world record as it was happening in the bar. And yes, if you go on Twin Galaxies, the Twin Galaxies website, and search Sunset Riders Arcade World Record, you can watch the full video and hear Martin and Riss's wonderful commentary at the same time as well. So
and James as well.
Oh, and James, yeah.
James popped up with a couple of tidbits here and there.
Yeah.
James is like horrendously hungover, wasn't he? Like,
I don't know. I don't know if he'd progressed to hungover, or if he was still drunk.
It was still
I'm not. I think he was in that awful in between.
Tiding
stage.
over the drinky stage, and kept it going, kept it going.
Let me say, it was commentary gold though. So
so check it out on twingalaxies.com. Do it. It's great.
I loved having multiple people in the commentary box for sure. I think that's actually a really great way of running a game. And in this case, it was great because it was unique insight into the gameplay. From Riss, who obviously knows Tim very well, but also knows the game very well because of that. So that was really cool.
Well, that was when I really honed my skills, and I think first beat the game for the first time was during lockdown. And our house is not that big, so the Pandora's box is sort of set up in the lounge room where Riss was a lot of the time, and so I tend to almost mutter to myself as I'm playing the games, and I think she just was there and took enough of it in that, when we were first talking about her commentating, she said, I don't really know what I'm talking about. I said, you probably know more than just about anyone else about this game, because she was forced to be in the same room with me as I went through run after run after run, trying to stay sane during lockdown.
Oh, that's incredible.
That would be very, very true there.
Yeah.
Certainly proven.
Well, let's talk briefly about the ports, because the interesting thing about Sunset Riders, and going back to us talking about how well known this game isn't when it really should be, because it's a fantastic game. Obviously had an arcade release in 1991 and only had two official ports to home consoles. There is a PlayStation 4 version. So just looking at Martin McFly's comment in the comments here, I live for a 4-player arcade cabs, and Sunset Riders are my all-time favorites. Sunset Riders for PS4, currently available to purchase on the PlayStation Store. Great game. Yep. So if you do want to play Sunset Riders at home right now, I believe that it's a company called Arcade Archives did a re-release of it in March 2020, and you can buy it online for the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 4. That's how you can play Sunset Riders at home. But it did have two console ports. It was ported to the Sega Genesis, Sega Mega Drive, and it was ported to the Super Nintendo. And the Super Nintendo version is how I played it over the years before I was very lucky enough to get my hands on a PCB. But the interesting thing, just talking about the two console ports, is that they're very different. The Super Nintendo is almost like an arcade perfect port with a couple of little changes, but the Mega Drive version is actually more of a cut down version of the arcade. Both look great and sound great. Admittedly, I think the Super Nintendo just pips the Mega Drive version in terms of sound and graphics. Again, it's very authentic to the original arcade, but I'm just going to very quickly read through the differences. For instance, you can only play in the Mega Drive version, you can only play 2 characters from the arcade, which is Billy and Cormano. You can't play the full 4 characters. And that's where these guys got their surnames from. So sorry, in the arcade, the characters only had first names, but when it was ported to the Sega Mega Drive, they gave Billy and Cormano surnames. So that's why we've got Billy Cool and we've got Cormano Wild. So that's where
I did wonder that, because when I was doing the world record run, I heard Martin reference Cormano Wild, and I was like, I've played this game a lot, and I don't think I've seen the word wild once.
So that's it. Yeah, that came from the Sega Mega Drive.
The story, man.
I thought you were just saying this guy's just wild.
Just
like,
really,
you know,
really into
the other guys are okay, but this one guy, he is really cool.
He's
Cormano, he's wild. Just
They got their numbers.
on the Sega Mega Drive version, only 4 of the 8 bosses from the arcade version are featured. So that's Simon Greedwell, Paco Loco, Chief Scalpum, and Sir Richard Rose. And each of the 4 chapters are divided into 2 stages. And then, all the dialogue is not digitally voice captured. It's just voice text bubbles on the Mega Drive version. So the Mega Drive version really is a very cut down version of the arcade. So, for instance, you don't get the bonus stages, which, as we said, were like the first person view of the guys coming up. In the Mega Drive version, it's the horse stage. So there's a stage in the arcade when you're riding a horse and you've got to shoot. That is actually the bonus stage in the Mega Drive version. But there is actually a versus 2-player mode on the Mega Drive version, where the players must shoot each other until one of the players runs out of health. So I actually had the Mega Drive version for a few years as well, but just being a completionist idiot when it came to my retro video game collection. And then one day I was like, why have I got these 3 versions of the game? What's wrong with me? So I actually sold my Mega Drive version, but I do remember it being, a very cut down version of the arcade, where the Super Nintendo version pretty much has only a few changes to it from the arcade. Okay, so this is a Nintendo thing, but obviously in the arcade version, there's dancers, there's dancer girls, and there's girls who would kiss your character when you run into like a doorway, and give you bonuses and all that kind of stuff. These dancers in the Nintendo version are more conservatively dressed than they are in the arcade version. What else?
Much more so, yeah.
Okay, and then they actually changed. So in stage 6. And we briefly touched upon this earlier in the podcast, the Native American enemies, which were in stage 6, along with the boss of the Native Americans, Chief Wigwam, were actually changed to, Chief Scalpum, were actually changed to, he's Chief Wigwam in the Super Nintendo version. Yes, so he was called Chief Scalpum in the arcade, and they changed his name to Chief Wigwam. But there were actually Native Americans that you could fight in stage 6. I think they were all removed and replaced with regular outlaws. So the only, So that was the biggest. So that was the biggest sort of change in the Super Nintendo version. And then all the bosses and dialogues were subtitles as well. But there were voice clips as well carried over from the arcades, which is very cool. So if you wanted to if you were choosing between what version for a home console or one in my retro collection, then obviously the Super Nintendo is the more desirable one if you don't want to get a digital version for the Switch and the PlayStation 4 over the Sega Genesis version, which is a bit more cut down and a bit more, shall we say, watered down compared to the arcade version. But yeah, Super Nintendo version is great. Super Nintendo version now goes for a lot of money as well. If you can find a nice minty box copy, you definitely you definitely got to pay out a few pennies for that one. So what's this? My little brother saying Mega Drive over the Super Nintendo just to annoy Ben. Yes, that is annoying. If you do want an actual experience of the game, definitely go Super Nintendo.
I've actually I own and have played the PS4 version.
Cool.
But I didn't spend much time on it. I got very cranky because, and maybe there was an option, I just couldn't find it. You didn't get to pick your character.
Oh, really?
If you press start, you were player 1, so you played as player 1.
Oh,
right.
That's a bit annoying.
Especially.
So who's player 1? Is that Billy? Is that or Steve?
It's one of the pistol guys.
Yeah, Billy or Steve.
Billy Cool's number 1.
Billy Cool. He's so cool because he wears blue.
Not that cool. If you have to play as him.
Oh man. So, well, that's kind of Sunset Riders. Is there any other thoughts on Sunset Riders we want to leave everybody with, apart from the fact that it's an amazing game and that you should play it because it's so wonderful? And if you're in Sydney, come and visit 989 and play the arcade that Tim actually got the world record on, which is very, very exciting.
It's got some world record spunk on it still.
It does. It does.
Sure.
It does. As does Metal Slug 2, as does Point Blank 2, as does Wonder Boy, as does Midnight Resistance. I don't clean those cabinets.
We should we should stress that we clean them, but just not enough to scrub the luck out of them.
This is it. This is it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, lucky cabs. I had one question for Tim actually before we wrap up the podcast. And by the way, guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight to talk about Sunset Riders.
It's always fun.
I do love this cab so much, or this game, I should say. Tim, are you gonna? Is there any other world records on the horizon for you?
Hopefully, the next one I'm working on is New Rally X, which is an excellent game. Yeah, I think you've got an original cab now on the floor.
I've got an original board. I'm hoping we can use it. It's a license. It's a proper licensed Namco board, which has 2 versions of the game on. I can't see why it wouldn't be allowed for world record because it's an original licensed board. So,
yes,
I think the main thing would be to research if there is any variation, but I mean, I highly doubt it. Finding the information on this is often hard now because a lot of that information is lost. But in general, I mean, if you play both versions, and you know, Tim would certainly know the difference. I
haven't noticed a difference, at least a significant one, in the versions that I've played from sort of the Pandora's Box one to the bootleg that you had to this one. But yeah, and I think at the moment I can get a score that's above the world record. It's just being able to do it consistently and then trying to push it higher and higher, because there is almost a finite, well, there's a finite score in most games, but it's generally looking at finishing the game and then trying to do that with as many lives left as possible.
Does Rally X have a definitive end, or is it just a loop?
Yeah. No, there's 15 stages, and at the end of the stages it goes, well done. It's like you've beaten the game. It actually says on the thing, it's like you've beaten the game. Now go for the world record.
And you're like, yes, I will do that. That sounds good.
Anything you say, tiny PCB.
That's incredible, man. That'll be so exciting. Yeah, let me know when you're ready to do that, and we'll get that happening.
Yeah, well, hopefully I can get back in there, because my main version sucks.
Right. It's one of those. Yeah.
When you try and turn corners, it'll clip you into corners and just like shake before it finally.
I hate that. Same for mine. And also, it doesn't display most of the digits for your score.
I think it's only the 2 and the 3. The 4 is shown as an underscore.
Yeah.
But the 2 and the 3 are just blank.
Yeah.
Which
is super fucking annoying.
Obviously, if you're chasing a record, that sucks. But I like, for the most part, I know when it's a 2 and when it should be a 3. But
yeah, it's the clipping issue, because I've played.
Sounds like we have the same version.
Same thing. Yeah, it's terrible.
Man, yeah. Well, look, let me know, man. When you're ready, we'll be ready, and we'll get that one. We'll get that one taped.
Hopefully not too far away.
Well. Yeah.
I did some commentary as well, because I love that game. But
oh man, that's gonna be a great day. Can't wait for that. That'll be so much fun. What about you, Martin? Have you actually thought about doing another world record? No pressure, because you know. It's all about games you love, I guess. It's like, if you love a game so much and you want to put a record down for it, like...
Yeah, like, I mean, there are definitely games that I would like to, but I'm not realistically close and not really currently working on anything. Because, outside boring, normal, real life has been so full on, it's been a bit hard to kind of concentrate on anything like that. And because I have also many other nerdy hobbies, I've been kind of, you know, putting my big chubby unwashed Cheeto encrusted nerdy fingers in many pies. But so yeah, because I paint miniatures and stuff, and I do that for people and do it for sort of challenges, and have just finished a bunch of stuff for that. So I do have that opportunity and that gap.
What's your Instagram?
Tane's miniature painting. So usually a lot of like 80s and 90s old school, let's say like Marauder, Games Workshop, there's some Heartbreaker stuff, there's a few other things, do some commissions for people. And that's been keeping me busy because sometimes, as much as I love screens and games, I've been trying very much to limit screen time through COVID and through lockdown, which is why I started doing this. And now I think since COVID started, I think I've painted about 550 models. Or
Wow.
something like that.
Wow. In two and a bit years. That's incredible.
Yeah, so actually, I think it's more. I just realized. So yeah, it's become a bit of a thing, and it's been nice because people sometimes pay me, or I've been recently a couple of magazines and stuff, so that's been really nice. But yeah, no, I'm thinking about it. The Metal Slug series always calls me back. I've been training. Well, as we said, we've got Battle of the Arcades coming up, so we already know what games are listed, and I've been working on a lot of those and enjoying them.
Is there? I can't remember if there's a Metal Slug. We did a whole. By the way, listeners, we did a whole episode on Battle of the Arcades, which I think maybe was episode 3 or 4. So have a listen to that if you want to know what a Battle of the Arcades is and how it works. Is that there isn't a Metal? Is there a Metal Slug one game? No, not on this list.
No, not this time. No,
not this time. No.
We've got a lot of the sort of bubble-esque games on there. So Nightmare in the Dark, which Tim is a huge fan of. He's been working on that.
I'm a big fan of that.
What's the world record of Nightmare in the Dark? That'd be an interesting one. Holy moly.
22 or 23 mil.
Oh my god.
Wow.
That's huge.
The RNG in that game is
it
wild
is.
as far as
really
what
is.
you can pick up. So I wouldn't be surprised, but you would need to have a perfect run, regardless of your gameplay, for just randomness to be able to get that.
And that's where dying on that game costs you points like a lot. Like it's
time.
Yeah.
You're pretty much one crediting no deathing the game. If you're looking at getting even a respectable high score in that sense. But Snow Bros was part of a Game of the Month thing that I've been playing that, and I'm finally getting over 2 million on that. Certainly nowhere near a world record, but something that I'm slowly working on and enjoying. But yeah, no, there's a few other things sort of on the cards, and as I said, I'm kind of want to play Metal Slug X a bit more, just because I kind of didn't give it the time when it was released, and it doesn't have slowdown. It's got variation. It's essentially a modified version of Metal Slug 2. That's more challenging. So I kind of want to do that, but I have a lot of
I think I've got the cart of that one. I've pretty much got most of the Metal Slug. I think I've got the original Neo Geo of that cart of that. So yeah, look, the option's always there, Martin.
Speaking of Neo Geo as well, I saw with your gaming room finally starting to come together that you had the Neo Geo console plugged in. Yeah,
I shared that photograph today to be sarcastic because it's just a CRT TV on the floor with my Neo Geo hooked up. It's a bit like, here's my games room. Yeah, man. Like I love the Neo Geo. We should do a whole podcast on the Neo Geo. I could talk about it for hours.
Just like play it more first.
Oh so man, the games.
You'll have to oblige us.
Yeah, 100%. Like I've got I managed to pick up a copy of the Super Spy and Crossed Swords for the AES. And I don't really own any AES games. I've got like the converter so I can play the MVS games in the AES. So for people at home, very quickly, not to bore anybody, you have the arcade version of a Neo Geo cabinet, which will come as, either a single slot or a 4 slot or a 6 slot. So you can change like the cartridges like a home console. Arcade version, which is called the MVS, and then you have a home console version, which is this nice, slick, black, kind of like sexy looking thing that can play single cartridges, but it's called the AES, and they were released simultaneously. And back in the day, if you had an AES, basically you were rich, because the AES is like so expensive. Even now, if you're collecting for it, it's ridiculously expensive. But I found a couple of games really like cheap in the Neo Geo world, and I got a couple. But yeah, I love it. I love it so much. Like the Neo Geo system for me is just like it's wonderful. There's so many interesting games. Oh man, like the run and guns, the shoot 'em ups, the beat 'em ups, like everything. Yeah, so we should do a whole podcast on the Neo Geo one day, and I'll wax lyrical. But oh, excuse me. Oh, I've just got a. Oh no, it's gone. Like
COVID police.
In the Central Coast, a lot of police, all the time, no matter what night of the week it is. So yeah, guys, I think that's a nice point for us to sort of wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Tim, for sharing your story of like getting the high score, playing tips, and all that kind of stuff, and our mutual love of the game for Sunset Riders. I look forward to hopefully seeing you guys in the arcade sometime soon when I'm next there. I'm a flouncy bar owner, so I'm hardly there anymore. But one day I'll be there and I'll let you know. And we'll still catch up over a beer. And
sure.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. Really appreciate it. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another podcast. So join us then. But thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone.
And
so much
thanks
for
to
having us.
Marty in the chat. I saw he wished me good luck with the record. Thanks, Marty. Appreciate that. But yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
See you soon, guys.
Yeah, we'll catch
Sorry.
you next time.
Catch you next time. What is it that Steve normally says? Steve normally says, was it
keep playing?
keep playing it or keep gaming?
Keep gaming? Oh,
Keep
Steve,
gaming.
Where are you, man?
Keep gaming.